The applause was deafening as my brother Brent took the stage. They were celebrating his genius, his brilliance, his creation of the Aries system. The only problem, he didn't actually do any of the work. That was me. I was the one who wrote the code, who secured every safety log, who made sure the technology didn't kill someone. But nobody knew that. My father, Edward, handed him the microphone, his smile wide, but I could hear the whisper that shattered everything. "Don't make a scene, Mia," he said, his voice like ice. "You're just the mechanic. Mechanics don't get equity. Now smile or you won't even get a severance package." So I smiled, but inside, I was crushed. I walked out, leaving behind the $1.2 billion worth of technology that I built. But they didn't know, not yet, what happens when a mechanic decides to stop fixing the engine. Well, let's just say things are about to change. For the past 10 years, I was nothing more than a ghost in the halls of Aries MedTech. I wasn't seen, I wasn't heard, unless something went wrong. Then, of course, it was all my fault. But behind the scenes, I was the one who kept the engine running. While Brent, my brother, partied his way through life, I worked. I worked long hours, sleepless nights, weeks on end with no vacation, no time for myself. I wasn't invited to the celebrations. I wasn't part of the family moments. I was just the mechanic. The person who made sure everything kept ticking while the world around me pretended it was all built by my brother. Brent couldn't even spell compliance, yet somehow he was the architect, the public face, the one everyone toasted to. He was the one who stood there taking the accolades while I cleaned up his messes. It wasn't always like this. When I first joined the company, I had dreams, big ones. I had a passion for the tech, for the impact it could have on people's lives. We were creating prosthetics that could change the world. But somehow those dreams slowly slipped away like sand through my fingers. At first, it was small things, small, almost imperceptible things that made me realize my value wasn't inherent. It was conditional. When I was 12, I won the state science fair. I was proud, so proud, running home with the blue ribbon in my hand, bursting to show my family. But when I walked through the door, I saw Brent crying over a broken toy car. And what did my father Edward say? He didn't even look at me. "Fix it, Mia," he said, pointing to my brother. "Your brother is the statue. You are the pedestal. Without you, he falls, so don't you dare move." That was the lesson. I wasn't the art. I was a support structure. I wasn't meant to shine. I was meant to hold everyone else up. Years passed and that lesson became my truth. My role was clear. Make sure the company ran smoothly. Make sure Brent's mistakes didn't get anyone hurt. Make sure everything was safe. But none of that mattered to anyone. Nobody knew how much I had sacrificed to make sure the systems worked, to make sure the code was clean, to make sure the devices were FDA compliant. The investors didn't care. My father didn't care. I was just a tool, a means to an end. As long as I kept things running, they were happy. But when it came time to acknowledge my work, when it came time to give credit, there was silence. And I kept taking it. I kept working. Why, I didn't know at first. I stayed because I was afraid. Afraid of being nothing. Afraid of being rejected. Afraid of being invisible. I told myself it didn't matter, that the work was enough, that I didn't need the praise, that I didn't need the recognition. But the truth was, I did. And when that recognition never came, the emotional toll began to weigh on me. I spent my 20s fixing his mistakes. It wasn't just work, it was my life. 18-hour days became routine. I spent holidays alone while they vacation paid for by me. I spent nights making sure the robots were safe for use, cleaning up after Brent's reckless decisions, knowing that if anything went wrong, it would fall on me. Every time there was an audit, I was the one who signed off on the safety logs because Brent didn't have the license. I was the one who corrected his errors in the code, fixing things that could have killed someone. And yet, when the press came calling or the investors showed up, Brent was the one they praised. He was the one they called the genius. He was the one who got the equity. He was the one who got the glory. And me, I was just the mechanic. It's funny how easy it is to forget your worth when everyone around you tells you you're nothing. It's funny how long you can keep convincing yourself that you're just fine, that it's okay to be invisible, but over time the exhaustion started to seep in. The realization that I was never going to be more than a cog in the machine hit harder and harder every day. And still, I stayed. It was a trap of normalized cruelty. And I was stuck believing I had no other choice but to keep fixing things, to keeping the wheels turning. I drove home every night alone, staring at the empty road ahead. I wondered if it was worth it. If this life was all there was. But I never had the courage to leave, not then. I told myself it was for the good of the company, for the good of the patients we helped. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just about the work. It was about me losing myself in the process. It was about being used, being invisible, being nothing but a tool. And it was breaking me, slowly, quietly, until one day I realized that I had been letting it happen for far too long. It took me a long time to finally wake up to the reality of it, all the truth I had been suppressing for years. There was a moment, one quiet and profound moment, when I realized that I was more than just a cog in their machine. I was the engine. And without me, everything they had built would come crumbling down. But for years, I couldn't see that. For years, I had been so conditioned to think of myself as nothing but a mechanic, just the person who fixed the problems, while the rest of the world reaped the rewards. I had been invisible, or at least that's what I thought. I thought that my worth was tied to the work I did for them, to their success, to the way they patted themselves on the back. But the truth was, I was more than that. It wasn't until I found myself sitting in my car parked just outside the building that I truly saw the weight of everything. I could hear the muffled sound of the celebration music from inside the walls of Aries MedTech, the same walls I had spent 10 years of my life building and maintaining. I had poured my sweat, my energy, my entire soul into making sure that the technology worked, making sure it was safe. But none of them, not even my father Edward or my brother Brent, ever saw that. They didn't care. They saw only their success, their shiny new prototype, and the investors they could brag about. I sat there in my 10-year-old sedan, the hum of the engine, the only sound keeping me tethered to reality. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly I could feel the blood rushing through my veins. And for the first time, I saw everything clearly. I had been silent for so long, swallowed my anger, my frustration, my pain. I had done what was expected of me, stayed in the background, took the blame when things went wrong, fixed the mistakes I didn't make, and never once asked for anything in return. But why? Why had I allowed myself to be invisible for so long? Why had I kept silent when everything in me screamed to be seen, to be heard, to be acknowledged? The answer I realized was because I had been taught to be invisible. From the moment I was a child, I had been conditioned to believe that my value didn't come from who I was, but from what I could do for others. My father, Edward, had taught me that love was conditional. He had shown me that my worth was measured by my usefulness, by how much I could contribute to the success of others. I wasn't the art, I was a pedestal, the one who held everything up but never received any credit, and I had believed it. For years I had believed that my purpose was to be a support structure to help everyone else shine while I stayed in the shadows. But that was a lie. I looked down at my hands, the hands that had written the code, the hands that had signed every safety log, the hands that had saved lives. These were the hands that had held everything together, that had kept the company running smoothly, that had kept their dreams from falling apart. And for the first time, I understood something deeply without me. There would be no company. There would be no technology. There would be no future. They needed me far more than they realized. Without me, everything would collapse. The machines, the prototypes, the billion-dollar investors, they were all nothing without the code I had written, without the systems I had built, without the safety nets I had put in place. I was the foundation, and I had been pretending I was nothing but a mechanic. In that moment, I realized I had been letting them define me for too long. I had let Edward and Brent convince me that I was just a cog in the machine, that I was invisible, that my worth was tied to their success. But no more. I wasn't just the mechanic. I was the creator, the architect, the one who held everything together. And it was time for them to know that. It was time for them to understand just how much power I had. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the security badge that had been my constant companion for the last decade. It was just a piece of plastic, a small badge with my name and title on it. But to me, it represented everything. It represented my place in the company, my role, my purpose. For years, I had accepted that this badge was all I would ever be: a mechanic, a worker, a servant to their success. But now, holding it in my hand, I saw it for what it truly was: a symbol of my power. I wasn't just a mechanic. I was the one who could pull the strings, the one who controlled the keys to the kingdom. Without me, nothing worked. Without me, their empire would crumble. I stared at the badge, then placed it gently on the mahogany table in front of me. The sound it made when it clicked against the wood was almost imperceptible, lost in the noise of the celebration around me. But to me, it was deafening. It was a declaration that I was done being invisible, a declaration that I was done playing their game. And with that simple gesture, I knew that everything was about to change. No more fixing their messes, no more staying silent. It was time to take control. And when I pressed that button on my phone, the one that had been my daily task for the last decade, I wasn't just accepting the system anymore, I was rejecting it. And for the first time in a long time, I felt free. I sat there in the silence of my car, the weight of everything pressing down on me. Inside the building, they were still celebrating, still toasting to the future that they thought belonged to Brent, to the Aries MedTech revolution. But outside in my hands, I held the real power. I looked at my phone, the same phone that had prompted me for the last 3,600 days to press that green button, the button that kept the wheels of this entire machine turning. The prompt was simple: biometric handshake required, level 5 administrator, authorized daily operations. For 10 years, I had pressed that button without hesitation, without question. because it was easier than dealing with the consequences of not doing it. It was a safe choice. The choice that kept the peace, kept me in the shadows, kept me from rocking the boat. But today was different. I wasn't that person anymore. The girl who had spent years fixing their messes, covering up their mistakes, swallowing her pride so they could keep going, she was gone. And now, as I stared at the screen, I felt a strange calmness settle over me. I had the power. I had always had the power. They just didn't realize it yet. The green button, the one that had been my leash for so long, was nothing more than an illusion of control. And I didn't need to play their game anymore. I took a deep breath, my thumb hovering over the screen. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, but my hand was steady. I had already made my decision. This wasn't just about a button. This was about taking back what was mine, my work, my worth, my voice. Without me, their precious system would fail. Without me, the future they were celebrating would crumble to dust, and the world would finally see it. I pressed decline. The screen flashed red almost immediately. Authorization denied, it read. Initiating emergency protocol. I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. The consequences had already started. I turned my gaze to the tablet on the dashboard where the live stream from inside the building was still playing. In the boardroom, Edward was laughing, his glass raised high in the air. The investors were clapping, oblivious to the disaster that was unfolding just beneath the surface. And behind him, the Aries Mark IV prototype arm was performing a delicate piano sonata, its titanium fingers moving with fluid grace. It was the jewel of their operation, the crown jewel of the billions they had invested. But now as I watched, the music stopped. The fingers of the prototype froze mid-strike, locked in a rigid pose. The silence that followed felt louder than the applause had been. The boardroom grew tense, their smiles fading, replaced by confusion. Edward turned around, expecting the arm to continue, but it didn't move. He waved his hand in front of it, thinking it was just a glitch. But there was no glitch. There was no quick fix this time. The next sound was the one that would haunt them. A low, rhythmic beep began to pulse from the console, growing louder with each passing second. Beep, beep, beep. It was the FDA-mandated alarm for an unsupervised device, an alarm that could only be triggered by one thing: an unauthorized shutdown. The prototype was frozen, the entire system was locked down, and there was nothing they could do. Brent rushed to the console, his face pale. I could see the panic in his eyes as he tapped furiously at the screen, trying to bypass the lock to get the arm moving again. But there was nothing he could do. He wasn't qualified. He didn't have the access. The red banner appeared behind him, clear and undeniable. System lockdown, unauthorized operation, licensed supervisor missing, all units disabled. The investors stopped clapping. They exchanged nervous glances. Edward's smile faltered as he looked around the room, scanning, searching for the one person he had just fired, the one person he had underestimated. He didn't know it yet, but he had just lost everything. And as the beeping continued to fill the silence, I knew that this was only the beginning. The phone buzzed in my lap, the name flashing across the screen like a warning Edward. I could hear the chaos in the background before I even answered, the frantic shuffling of papers, the sharp beeping of the alarm, the investor murmuring in confusion. I swiped the screen, not bothering with a greeting. He didn't deserve one. "Turn it back on right now, Mia." He barked, his voice thick with desperation. "I know you did this. I know you rigged it. You've sabotaged everything." His words were sharp accusations designed to cut through the silence designed to bring me to my knees. But I wasn't falling for it anymore. I leaned back in my seat, looking at the live stream on my tablet. The chaos unfolding in the boardroom felt almost surreal. Brent was sweating through his expensive suit, desperately, trying to undo the damage. Edward stood there, trying to put on a mask of control, but it was all slipping away, unraveling in real time. The prototype arm was still frozen, the beeping still relentless, and there was nothing he could do to fix it. "You don't understand, Mia," Edward continued, his voice now a low, frantic growl. "You've planted a virus. You've held us hostage for money. I will sue you for everything you have. I'll make sure you never work in this industry again." His words were hollow threats, empty promises meant to intimidate, to break me. But all I could feel was a strange sense of calm. He thought he still had power. He thought he could control me with fear, with guilt, with lies, but I wasn't the same person anymore. "It's not a virus, Edward," I said quietly, my voice steady. "It's a feature. Specifically, it's the 24-hour supervisor mandate required for Class 3 medical devices. Without a licensed administrator to sign off on the logs, the system defaults to safe mode. It's the law." I could hear him pacing on the other end of the line, his breath ragged with frustration. "Save your technical garbage," he snapped, his voice rising. "You're ruining everything. You're ruining us." I could feel the weight of his words, but I wasn't going to let him manipulate me anymore. I had spent years trying to please him, trying to earn his approval, but not anymore. I wasn't his tool, his puppet. "You don't care about the law, Edward," I said, my voice cold, detached. "You only care about saving face, and right now, your face is all over the floor." There was a long silence, then the unmistakable sound of my mother's voice. Her voice broke through, breathless, filled with that high-pitched desperation I had heard too many times before. "Mia, please. How could you do this? This is Brent's big night. He needs this win. Why are you trying to destroy this family?" Her words stung, but they didn't have the same power over me anymore. "You chose your side, Mom," I said quietly. "I didn't destroy the family. You did when you stood by and let Dad give everything I built to a gambling addict." Edward's voice came back louder now, desperate. "You'll regret this, Mia. You'll pay for this." I didn't even flinch. I had already made my choice. I wasn't afraid of him anymore. I wasn't afraid of any of them. They had underestimated me for too long. And this time I wasn't backing down. As I was marched out of the building in handcuffs, my mind raced. They had thought they could bury me. They had thought that by framing me for something I didn't do, they could erase me completely. But they didn't realize something I had already planted the seeds of their destruction. As I was hauled away, I watched them scramble to cover their tracks, but it was too late. The truth was already out there. And it didn't take long for the truth to unravel. The lead investor, someone who had been quietly observing from the back, saw the error code flash on the screen. It wasn't a virus. It was federal compliance. He knew the law, and he wasn't fooled by my family's lies. With one simple suggestion, he told the agents to check 21 CFR Part 11, and everything fell apart. The truth came flooding out. My brother Brent had been falsifying data, overriding safety limits, and cooking the books to inflate stock prices. It wasn't me sabotaging the company. It was him. He had been the one behind the fraud, the one who had been manipulating everything to his advantage. And once that truth hit the public, everything else came crashing down. Aries MedTech was seized, liquidated, and dissolved. Brent pled out, and my father Edward found himself facing charges that would ruin him. My mother, realizing the magnitude of what had happened, abandoned ship, but by then, it didn't matter. I wasn't going back. I had reclaimed my power, my business, and my future. The toxic legacy they tried to leave me with was nothing but ash now. As I walked away from it all, I knew one thing for certain: they had underestimated me, and I was finally free. In the end, standing up for yourself is the hardest thing you can do. It's easy to be quiet, to let things slide, to hope that somehow everything will just fix itself. But the truth is, systems built on lies will always collapse. You can only suppress your power for so long before it breaks free. And when it does, it's not just about exposing the lies, it's about reclaiming your worth, your voice, and your future. For years, I let them define me, let them strip me of my dignity. But when I chose to stand up, when I chose to walk away from everything I had built for them, I realized that my strength was always there. It just took a long time for me to see it. I want you to think about your own experiences. Have you ever been in a situation where you were pushed to the sidelines, where you were made to feel small, unimportant? Maybe it was a job, a relationship, a family dynamic. Maybe it was something else. But the important thing is, you always have the power to change things. You always have the power to take control of your own narrative. So, if you found strength in this story, if it's made you reflect on your own journey, take a moment. Like this video, subscribe, and join me in supporting more stories of empowerment, of breaking free, of taking back what's yours. Because when you stand up, the world will finally see you for who you truly are.